Kirill Dmitriev, CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, is with us now. And you were listening to Chancellor Merkel's speech last night. Were you convinced by it? Did it give you any more confidence that that Germany has a hold of this problem in Europe?
I think it was a very powerful speech, and I think many people were convinced because it wasn't excessively optimistic, it was realistic. And it underlines the role that Germany has been playing to resolve this. And everybody understands that Germany is a big driver of the European economy, and lots of things depend on Germany. But it was also realistic to the extent that time is needed for politicians to solve Europe's problems, and Germany is definitely helping that crisis to be resolved as quickly as possible, but time is definitely needed.
Do you think that investors will be willing to give her that time?
I think investors are getting impatient, and I think, it's difficult to understand why can't politicians get their act together quicker and act sooner. So I think there will be more and more pressure from the business community because additional uncertainty, additional time leads to additional volatility, which could make problems even worse.
What are you seeing in terms of investments? I'm just wondering, have you been making any changes or adjustments to your exposures so far this year? It's still early days.
Well, we are pursuing some interesting opportunities in Europe, and we believe that now the pricing is very attractive to actually make investments. But to do so, we need to also understand that growth trajectory will come back to Europe. So I think we are looking at a number of very attractive opportunities, but the real question is, how can growth come back? Because it's easy to make investments, but you need to have growth to really get good rate of return.
Can I ask whereabouts you're looking in terms of industries and also geographically, which countries?
Well, in Europe, because we're also looking quite a bit in Russia. We are looking to Italy, we are looking in actually Germany, we are looking in UK, and basically looking at things that are either, we look at automotive components, we look at a bunch of other assets in logistics that really we believe are significantly undervalued right now.
And do you think that other investors will follow suit, that prices will become so attractive, valuations so low that it will actually spur investment to an extent, or if the debt crisis deteriorates that much more, will that investment just stop no matter how attractive pricing is?
Well, it's this traditional battle between greed and fear. And I think for now, fear is winning, and most people are just sitting on the fences waiting for the crisis to solve itself. But I think more and more people will be finding very attractive opportunities, and we are talking to a very large number of sovereign wealth funds, private equity funds, and there is a growing consensus. There are some interesting investment opportunities emerging.
So you're bullish on Italy?
Well, I'm a careful optimist because I believe that cycles, will be here forever. And always, it's difficult when you are in a part of a cycle understand where it's going next. But definitely at some point there will be growth. And we actually believe that hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
And so tell me, where else in Europe are you watching very closely? I mean, you mentioned you're interested in Germany, but of course that's more of a core European market, so it isn't subjected to the same challenges or pressures that we're seeing elsewhere. Do you like France?
France is an interesting market as well. Obviously, Italy is a place where we focus quite a bit right now because we believe that it's very attractive and valuations are pretty low. France also has significant promise, and particularly for Russia, it's interesting to invest in things that have synergistic effect with Russia. And France has a number of technological companies that can really create tremendous growth opportunities if you think about synergies with the Russian market. So we look at France, look at other markets, but basically we believe that if you invest in Europe and help Europe sell to Russia and get synergies with Russia, it's one of the significant elements of the growth that's so much needed in Europe.
I want to introduce a couple more people to you, because also with us now, EU Justice Commissioner, Viviane Reding, and Patrick Odier, Swiss Bankers Association Chairman. Thank you both very much indeed for speaking to us. So Viviane, if I can start with you, what have you learned so far during this World Economic Forum?
Well, I come here very regularly in order to meet people from around the world. Normally, I am in contact with the Europeans. Here I meet also the Russians, the Americans, the emerging countries, and it is fascinating because also a lot of proactive explanation has to be done, because when you read the press around the world, you think that Europe is collapsing, and I have to explain them what is really behind, and I must say they are very astonished because it is an analysis of the real situation they are not used to.
So, can I get your thoughts on that, Mr. Odier? I mean, do you think that that perhaps the situation in Europe is exaggerated in the minds of many investors and politicians when they come here? Do you think they get a sense that the reality on the ground is not so bad, that actually Europe will be able to deal with all its problems?
Well, I would say the complexity deserves a lot of talks, discussion, exchanges of view, and in this respect, I think Davos is a wonderful platform. I wouldn't say that the problems are exaggerated, but perhaps the distance between the problem and the solution is. So it's good to be here in Davos because you feel, how close are we yet to agree?
Kirill, is the distance between the problem and the solution narrowing?
Well, I believe it is. We hopefully hope that it will be narrowing quicker. But I think, there is tremendous progress that has been made in the last couple of months on getting all of the stakeholders together. And this dialogue is really critical because, the solution hopefully is within a couple of months. We just want to make sure it happens.
I wanted to get into data protection with you because obviously this is the thing that you've been focusing on a great deal in the EU's plans to overhaul the region's data protection rules. Are they all on track for adoption at the end of January?
They have been adopted yesterday by the European Commission. They are on the platform and ready to go with the lawmakers. So we do have a functioning parliament in Europe, and I'm very confident the parliament is going to vote the rules I have put on the table. But you see, if I link this to the discussion we had before, we are not just speaking about the euro, strongest currency in the world. We are also speaking about how can we bring creativity into our continent, a continent of 500 million citizens. And this continent is sometimes blocked by conflicting rules in the different member states. So now on data protection, we do have 27 different rules. I scrap those, replace them by one rule, one continent, one rule, one regulator. And this saves the economy 2.3 billion a year. So you see, that is also a question of growth.
Is that what people want to see? Is that your perspective, that we need to unify rules and regulations to make it a lot easier to do business and to invest in Europe?
I mean, first of all, in the data protection area, of course, we welcome this trend, and Commissioner Reding has mentioned the necessity to bring all those regulations together. We, as Swiss, have this notion of data protection deeply rooted in our genes, so we welcome it. Secondly, from a cost point of view, this efficiency that we all look for now has to be achieved not only at the business level, but also in the administration. That's perfectly coherent with what everybody's doing now.
How much pushback have you had on these new rules? Because there had been, I suppose, some, well, not criticism, but opposition, as you would expect, from non-EU companies, US companies like Google and Facebook. I know that no companies have been named throughout this process, but nevertheless, will non-EU companies have to abide by these rules?
Well, if somebody likes to utilize the golden opportunity of an open market, a new digital market with 500 million potential consumers, it's normal that this person, this company, obeys to the rules which are prevailing on this market. So we do not do rules for one or the other companies. We do the same set of rules for a whole continent and for all those who like to do business on this continent.
Kirill, let me bring you in at this point, because one of the big debates going on in Davos is about the digital revolution, if you like, and the need for companies to keep on innovating. Where do you stand? Is there a risk of rules and regulations potentially getting in the way, or actually does it give companies, investors, a greater sense of security?
Well, we believe definitely that internet will drive tremendous growth in Europe and in Russia. And what we've seen is actually internet is very much behind some of the social debates that are happening in Russia. So it's not only good for business, it's also good for democracy, it's also good for the country. So I think unification is definitely very important. And I think Europe can play a bigger role in this international revolution, because so far the US has actually been having a lead in many companies in that space. So I think it's up to Europe to raise to the challenge and to really be extremely competitive. And for that, new rules and regulations are very important to unify and to really be very competitive in the world internet environment.
What are your thoughts on that, Patrick? It does seem to be a space that the US has managed to dominate and actually be relatively successful on when you compare it to Europe. Is it time this year? Is this something that European companies need to focus on? Is it time to catch up?
I think this is definitely a trend that is worldwide, and we have to bring our contribution, as was mentioned. I think this whole issue brings us to the fascinating debate between transparency, fluidity of information, and protection. And I think here both aspects have to be treated. I.e., we should foster the democratic way of passing information and communicate it, but at the same time we should make sure that we have rules and safeguards so that this information is not abused.
All right. Well, Viviane Reding, EU Justice Commissioner, thank you very much again for joining us this morning. It was really interesting to get your take on how Davos has gone so far for you. Kirill, just want to pick up on what we were speaking about before, and you were telling me that you are seeing very interesting opportunities in France and Italy, and you're looking for places where there is synergy with Russia. So tell me how much interest you've been getting from foreign investors when it comes to investing in your country.
Well, we set up a fund just in June, and we've been making lots of progress since then, because there are real issues in Russia that Russian government is solving and Russian people are solving, but there's also a perception gap. And people, you know, have sort of different opinions sometimes of Russia than what actually is. So we've had major interest. We signed up a term sheet with a Chinese investment corporation, through which they commit $1 billion to us to joint investments. And we've been working very closely with top sovereign wealth funds and private equity funds on specific opportunities in Russia.
So what are you've teamed up with the Chinese investment fund. Together, what are you looking to invest in?
Well, we believe that Russia and China will benefit dramatically from the increase in trade between the two countries. And, you know, we believe that it almost will double in the next, 3-4 years. So we invest in opportunities in logistics that will benefit from the trade. We are thinking about agriculture. We are thinking about value-added forestry. Because right now, for example, lots of forest being exported out of Russia without any value added. So we are thinking about projects that benefit from joint trade and cooperation between the two countries.